Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee, and of course, with me is Milly.
Hi.
We have Sophie.
Hey.
And the special guest who'll be interviewing today is Ms Hoffman. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So it's amazing to speak with you today. I guess people watching the show will primarily know you as a character designer on Mystery Incorporated and also the lead character designer on the new movie Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. So it is just incredible to have you here. Thank you.
I'm really flattered and excited to be here. Yeah, I'm just excited that everybody liked Trick or Treat Scooby Doo.
Oh, we definitely absolutely love it. And of course, with that movie coming out recently this year, in order to kind of backtrack, so we're taking it back towards the start of your career, before we set this up, I was looking at your Instagram and noticed that you've done so many amazing pieces of art. And I'm curious to know, before your career, was that talent with art what led you into character design? Or did you know that you want to become a character designer and that made you pursue art?
Like I'm weird. I knew I wanted to be in animation. Like I wanted to be a Disney animator, like since I was like 8 years old. And so that was just kind of like the thing. And I worked at it since I was 8. So but I've always been interested in art and drawing. And so, I was that kid that was like, no, I need to learn how to color in the lines on my coloring book as soon as possible. So but yeah, no, it was a decision I made at a really young age. And I was really fortunate because my parents actually encouraged it. And so they were just like, if that's what you want to do, we're not going to hold you back. And so I just started teaching myself how to draw like the way I think most of us do, where it's like if we like cartoons, which I'm big old toon head, right? Cartoon head. And so I started learning how to draw from the Disney movies I was obsessed with. I just, try to figure out how to draw Mickey and was really self-taught until just before college. So just kind of would tinker around and try drawing as close to on model as I could. It took a really long time to get there. I was miserable for a very long time.
No, honestly, you do amazingly. And just hearing your story is really interesting as well, because I was the kind of child whose parents had to guess what they were drawing, where they'd be like, oh, that's a really sweet dog, and it's like a rainbow or something. Like my drawings are way too far up, but it's great to hear that Disney inspired you as well. And so that end, do you remember any kind of artists or animators, or what the first time was that you kind of like honed in on an artist or animator that was somebody that really inspired you?
The very first animator I honed in on was actually Andreas Deha. Like everybody else was like super into Glenn Keane, and he's really talented, and I'm not gonna bash Glenn Keane because it's Glenn Keane, but like Andreas, I really loved the way he animated like all the villains. I was super into like how he handled the Beast and like Jafar. Like he did such a good job with Jafar, and like I got really, really lucky when I was in college because Lilo and Stitch was just coming out, and they got Andreas to come in and like lecture at Cal Arts. They had him come in, and everybody ran off to the Borders, because Borders was a thing back then. Bookstores aren't around that much anymore, at least not here. And they all went off and bought the Art of Lilo and Stitch book, and I came skipping in with my Disney Villains book because that was how I learned who he was. Like I had gotten this book, and it was like every other page of all the villains I really liked, it was like, oh, Andreas Deha, lead animator, and I was like, dude, I can't wait to meet this guy. It was like, he's like my idol. Like, I love this dude. So yeah, he was the one that I learned first, but then I took notes so that when you guys ask me questions, I wouldn't get all rambly. Let's see. I actually also learned at an early age who Savage Steve Holland is. He was the creator of a show over here called Eek the Cat in the 90s. Yeah, but he also was like, he did a few live action movies in the 80s that I really loved. And one of them in particular was this movie called One Crazy Summer. And it had John Cusack and this guy named Bobcat Goldthwait. And it was about John Cusack's character trying to get into the Rhode Island School of Design animation department. And so there were all these really funny little animations that would pop up as this character had nothing but bad luck, So like he's getting ready to go out on a date. One moment, Loki, shut up. That's my cat. The dog's sleeping quietly, the cat's wreaking havoc. So, but yeah, like, and so Savage Steve Holland was another influence. Those were like the two really big animation influences on me. So
that's awesome. Your resume highlights that you attended the California Institute of the Arts. What were some of the lessons that you learned while studying and you refer back to the most?
Well, there's I was there at a really lucky time, I think. Like getting a job after school wasn't great, but I was there at a really fortunate time where we actually had, my mentor was this older animator named Corny Cole. And he used to work at Disney, like he worked on Dumbo and stuff back in the day. And he was my mentor in school. And Corny had a mantra that he would tell all of us, and it was to fail. It was like, just fail, because you're not going to learn unless you make mistakes and you fail. And so I had Corny yelling at me to fail all the time. And then I had my favorite teacher, Bruce Richards, who was my perspective teacher. Basically, he taught me a valuable lesson of make sure that your foundation drawing is solid before you render it. He made me do over many an assignment because I tried to cover it with color when my structure was wrong. So, so I took away failure and make sure that my foundation is solid before continuing on to things. So I am quite meticulous with trying to make sure that everything is sound. So yeah, that was, yeah.
That's incredible. I think that's gonna be a good lesson that a lot of people, like watching this can absorb, because it's kind of crazy. When we started the show, I was expecting it to mostly be fans of Scooby that we're watching, but it's surprising, like whatever profession that the guest that we have on is in, that tends to be what audience comes to it. So it's absolutely incredible to kind of learn from that failure, and I guess as well not to be discouraged by it. And more about your time studying, were there any shows or movies that you were told to or like directed to watch around that time for kind of, I guess, some perspective on it?
Like there wasn't really a lot. There were things I chose to watch. This is gonna sound really weird, but I really love watching bad movies, and I learn way more from the bad ones than I do the good ones. So like I'll be that person that was like, I ran off to watch this movie called Bones with Snoop Dogg when I was in college, and it was a horror film because I love horror films. So like I went off to go watch, this movie Bones, and what's crazy about it is that it's directed by this guy named Ernest Dickinson, and he actually is an amazing director, and he's directed like half of the Walking Dead episodes now, like, so he's just like this amazing like African American director that like just doesn't get enough love, because like he also directed Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. And it like these movies have got this nice balance of comedy and good cinematography, and it's just like nobody would give it the time of day, and pay attention to the nice nuances and stuff like that, unless it's somebody like me that's going in to watch something that everybody else deems as bad and pulling out the good from it, So that and Eight-Legged Freaks was great. So,
Oh.
Okay, that's it,
Arquette.
JB.
Yeah, that's
you know,
speaking to
David
me there.
Arquette, you know, you
I've
can't go
never heard
wrong.
anyone talking about Eight-Legged Freaks, but I must have watched that about 85,000
Oh,
times.
dude, every time the spiders die and they've got that scream, is it not the best? They're just like,
Then
yeah.
it's
And
like,
you
oh gosh, it
Eight-Legged
is
Freak is
crazy.
great. Like,
I love
I
that.
really am a big horror fan. So, and the cheesy, but no, to answer your question seriously though, freshman year, my story teacher was trying to teach us about cinematography through black and white film, and she made us watch this documentary, and for the life of me I tried to find the name of it and I couldn't, but I do remember out of it that I was introduced to Alfred Hitchcock's movie Rebecca, and Rebecca has some wonderful like composition and light, and for a black and white film to sit there, like, just, not enough people appreciate black and white and the compositions and the light use from back in the day. And so Rebecca was a great one to watch just for, learning composition for film. It was awesome. So
It definitely sounds like quite an interesting time, especially with the black and white stuff, because I don't think I've seen many black and white films or black and white TV, apart from old Doctor Who. So it's definitely interesting to get that perspective. And I suppose, it's just incredible. And moving on to, I think this was like your first job, or one of your earlier jobs was as a revisionist, designer, and like storyboarder on South Park. And I'm curious to know how that whole experience came about.
So beforehand, what's not on my resume anymore, because when you go out into the industry, you have to cater your resume to kind of the job that you want, and then after like 10 years you kind of delete stuff. My first job after school, because the industry was in a slump in 2004, it took a year to get a job, and so you just had to be persistent. And so my first job out of school was actually at a website called Neopets. And so after 2.5 years at Neopets, I was like, I did not spend all this money on CalArts to stay at Neopets. I got snobby. I was a little snobby. And so a buddy of mine had just left South Park to go to a show called American Dad. And she recommended me as her replacement. And so that was how I got in at South Park. I still had to take a test, and I still had a very entertaining interview with my supervisor. But yeah, that was how I wound up at South Park, and I was there for 3 years. So
That's
the highlight of that one was I actually worked on the 200th and 201st episode, which are banned everywhere. You cannot see them because Matt and Trey once again depicted Muhammad. They put him in a sexual harassment panda, and Muslims said that whatever Muhammad was in, even if it was a costume, it was still Muhammad. And the Taliban kind of sent out our address to the studio, and so the FBI was there for a week. I think it was the FBI. It was definitely guys with guns protecting us. And then, for like 2 weeks. And then right after the second half of the episode aired, lockdown. Nobody has seen it since.
Oh gosh.
I've never been so stunned by an answer. And wow, like learning stuff from like religious education, obviously bound to rattle people, but to that extent is like, I couldn't even imagine that. That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
There's some shows that do that cross the line, but in a really kind of comedic way. Like Rick and Morty does that kind of humor, right? JayBee, you were introducing me to that recently.
Yeah. The saddest part was, and since nobody's seen it, like the saddest part about that episode airing was that if you're an old school South Park fan, which I was, when I started watching in 97, and so it was a big deal for me to get a job there. The saddest part was you finally found out who Cartman's dad was, and that Cartman had killed him. So it was sad. Now nobody knows who Cartman's dad is except for me and everybody who worked on it.
I mean, I guess kind of like that's been part of the fun of speaking with people that have kind of been involved in certain things, because every studio has things that perhaps don't make it to where Warner Brothers especially, and we've had the pleasure of kind of speaking with people and just kind of finding out these things that were so, you know, prominent to our childhood, that it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we've not seen that, or we didn't know that. And like you're saying, to have been watching South Park from 1997, it was a huge part of, you know, what you enjoyed. And so to that end, coming onto a project that had been so well established, was there an additional kind of pressure that there was this pre-established fan base that expected a certain thing?
At the time, there were two pressures that I had. The first one was I had to lie my butt off, because at the time they were not hiring fans. They didn't want fans working on the show. And I had been watching since the very first episode, with the exception of when I was in college and I didn't have time to watch. But, you know, I'd been watching, and so I had to be like, oh yeah, no, it's cool. I've seen a couple episodes, and it's like, got a, you know, big old list of like, dude, that one time that J-Lo, like Cartman's hand was J-Lo, like that was the best episode ever, you know, like that kind of thing. But there was that. And then I had the added pressure too, which was different, was at the time, the department I was in, the storyboard design department. So that department's really special. And if you've ever seen the documentary 6 Days to South Park, they didn't spend very much time in the room, but not only do you do storyboards and revisions, but you also do background, prop, and character design. And so you do a little bit of everything. And Trey, you know, is a mad genius, you know, but the added pressure I had was, at that time, they were hesitant to hire women in the department at that time, because of the schedule. They were afraid that they hadn't met a female that could handle it, that handle the schedule, handle the jokes, handle the off-color things. And until my predecessor opened the door for females. And so when she recommended me, it was kind of like, when I hopped in, it was like, I felt like I had something to prove. I felt like I had to be like, hey, like, yeah, I might cry in the bathroom every other day, but I'm still getting the job done, you know? So, and it was mostly because I was tired. The most I worked in a week was 106 hours in 1 week. And so I was just really tired.
Oh
So
gosh, that is so much.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a job cut out for somebody straight out of school, you
And
know, because
especially with kind of the attention to detail that comes into the work that you do. It's
yeah.
not just 106 hours where you can focus for a bit and then kind of lay back a little bit and then focus
There was
again.
no
Like,
back.
having to have that detail, you kind of have to be there with it a lot. And
Yeah.
also, South Park was, you know, animation style wise so different from some of the other things that you've done, and also it was something that had been pre-established and that kind of thing. So how did you head into that? How did you kind of familiarize yourself with the art style? I guess kind of you mentioning how you tried to recreate Disney scenes and things like that, you'd already kind of been familiarizing yourself with things from such a young age, but how did you treat this project?
I think that's where I was lucky, is as a kid, I had done so much mimicking of things, trying to teach myself how to, you know, like teach myself things that, now I can't do it with everything. Like, believe it or not, I really struggle with shows that looked like Dexter's Laboratory and like, you know, anything Gendy. Like I struggle, like I struggle with that wonderful, like that style. But with South Park, it was like I had so much exposure. I kind of knew what it looked like. And once I got into the department and I saw which programs they were using, as I learned the program and got better with it, I was able to understand how things were constructed better. So it was, you know, and on top of that, you have to have a fairly quick ramp up time. So in this case, I had a 1 week trial period. So by the end of that first week, I had to learn the program and figure out the style, you know, and it was, you know, it was a challenge, but it was a nice challenge. Like I like to be challenged. So the thing that's also really misleading about the South Park style is when you look at the model sheets, you see this really flat stick figure. But if you ever look at any special poses when somebody dies, it's always like, it's actually really grounded in reality with volumes and, proper volumes and perspective and stuff. So it's actually a very misleading show. Because it looks simple, but sometimes it is not. So
I know that was something they were saying about kind of Scooby Doo, is that because of the way they'd animated him, like sometimes it was so difficult to get him from certain angles, because you do kind of see this initial image of them from the front that works really well. Like you were saying with South Park, it works really well from the front, but then you could imagine that suddenly having to work some complexity into that. I know they said originally, I'm sure there was an animator that we spoke to that said originally Scooby was only kind of visible from 3 angles and you couldn't do any more than that.
Yeah, like a lot of animation, they tend to, like if you look at our model sheets, it's always a 3/4 front. And they tend to do every show I've been on the model sheet tends to be 3/4 front. And you almost never see them dead on front or dead on side because they look too weird from those angles, like they'll design them to look really appealing in 3/4 front and 3/4 rear. And then you'll notice that most shots are set up to keep them in those poses. I had the job just before Trick or Treat. I was character design lead on a show called Bless the Hearts. And that was one of the few shows where we were like, no, we want to try to make the front views and the side views look just as appealing as the 3/4, because it had been far too long with like, weird profile views. And it's just like, no, profile is kind of fun. Like everybody has an interesting, unique profile, which I also did bring over to Scooby, which like, if you look at like Coco's profile and stuff, like I tried to give her Coco and her front view, like I tried to make them not look too weird when you see them from those angles, because, that way it gives the animators a little bit more option, especially like, because a lot of people saw on Twitter, I'm sorry if I'm rambling, a lot of people on Twitter saw like Dan Haskett's test animation of Coco and how she kind of moved just so beautifully. And it was like, not only was it such an honor to have such a seasoned animator, design, like drawing my character and making it move, but it was like because there was a decent turnaround of the face, you could tell that he played with things more. So anyway, sorry.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Coco, because I was going to say that's the perfect example for it. You've definitely worked on amazing shows, and of course you've worked on Scooby. Your professional introduction to the world of Scooby was character design on the Mystery Incorporated series. But prior to this, how familiar were you with the franchise?
Oh, I've been a Scooby Doo fan since I was a baby. Like, I've been a huge Scooby fan since I was a baby. This is like, I couldn't be a Disney animator, but getting to work on Scooby is the next best thing. Like I was such a fan of Scooby that when I was watching Scooby at like 4, and I would have nightmares every night, and my parents would pull me into bed with them. And they forbade me from watching Scooby, and it only lasted for a week because the whining that took place in the day when I couldn't watch Scooby was far worse than the nightmares at night. So they just gave up. They're just like, go watch Scooby. And I was like, sweet, but yeah, I was super familiar up until, was it Scooby Doo and the Alien Invasion or something like that? Or Alien Invaders. So after that, I kind of was in school and working after that. So I kind of lost track. But yeah, when Zombie Island came out, that was like, oh, this is the sweetest Scooby yet. And then don't even get me started on the Hex Girls. Oh, so that was part of what got me hired on Trick or Treat, was the fact that I knew Scooby so well. So they were just like, you actually know who the Hex Girls are? And I'm like, how do you not? Like, doesn't everybody know the Hex Girl? Dude, like, anyway. So that's pretty
that's amazing. Either through watching the show or working on it, was there ever a member of the gang who you felt particularly drawn to?
Velma, because she was the smartest. It was like she's the one that actually handled everything, and she's the one that kept misplacing her glasses. And so it was just like, I have reading glasses, but I always misplace them. They're somewhere. But yeah, no, it was Velma. I thought that I liked that she was the smart one, and growing up, you didn't always see the girl as the smart one. It was, and then she was not, especially in the original, she wasn't sexualized. And so like she was curvy and not sexualized and intelligent, and I just kind of felt like I identified with her the most. So
yeah, I mean, Velma definitely has had such a resurgence, especially lately, kind of the peak, it almost peaked when, Linda Cardellini came on board. And then it kind of just had like, it almost reached a fever pitch until, of course, recently with Trick or Treat as well, and the new show coming out, it's like Velma mania at the moment. So it's definitely quite an interesting time to be a Velma fan. And I think another important landmark for Velma was in, the Mystery Incorporated series. Like, do you remember how your work on that show like came about?
Yeah, that's actually really funny. I didn't know I was credited. So what happened was I was friends with my friend Derek Wyatt, who recently passed last year. Like Derek was a friend of mine, and there was a job opening, and then I was also friends with this woman named Brianne Druard, or I still am friends with Brianne, but Brianne Druard was working on Mystery Inc. as a character designer, and then Derek was the lead designer on that, and they needed, I believe, a freelancer. And so I took a test, and the reason I'm credited is because one of the characters from my test was so good that he wound up getting thrown into like 3 or 4 episodes, and they gave me credit every time they used him. So I didn't get the gig, but I got a character on the show that I didn't even realize I was getting credited for until I went to my IMDb one day, and I was like, whoa, this is sweet. But yeah, and he was just a military guy, just a little military dude. So
so was it that one character, or were there any other characters, or I guess any concepts that you came up with that either ended up not being used or anything like that?
I wish I could say there was more. I mean, I did do more for the test. Like, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever talked to you guys about what happens when you apply for a job. Some studios make you take a test. And so they give you like 5 characters to design. And if they like some of them, even though they chose not to go with you, they will usually, I think now it's like a rule that they have to pay you if they use the character, and then they have to credit you. And so I did do like 3 or 4 other characters for that test, but I don't think any of them got used. So
it's so interesting to hear the process for that, because we've spoken with people with all different kind of backgrounds in working in Scooby, and we've seen some of the things, like, for example, people pitching movies and what they did to do that, like they created a book, or they made school report cards for each member of the gang and that kind of thing. And so it's really interesting to hear how you became involved as well. And so when you were creating those characters, because Mystery Incorporated is certainly kind of seemed to be a bit darker than the other series, was that reflective in the brief you were given, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Derek and Brianne, they both came from Teen Titans. And so Derek, that show, like the characters in that show were definitely his style. And he had, coming from like a Teen Titans, Batman kind of Glenn Murakami kind of style, it definitely brought in that darker element. And so when you looked at all the reference material, you could see that it's like, okay, this is going to feel like Batman the Animated Series a little bit. And so you need to have your characters be a little less, the characters needed to be less traditional, like traditional Scooby, and more Batman. And so, you know, you just kind of, you know, squared off the fingertips, made a little more angular. There was a little less loosey-goosey and more like badassery. If that's a term, it is now.
It is now, and we know what you mean by it, so it's a good term
Okay.
too.
Good.
No,
So-
that's great and really interesting to hear. And of course, about 9 years later, you then came to be involved in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. So how did the process differ between, you know, the initial kind of, you know, creating kind of character designs for Mr. Incorporated to the work you did for Trick or Treat?
So what was really lovely about that was like, and I know you guys have interviewed Audie. So what was really great was that when I interviewed with Audie straight up told me, he's like, I want it to look like old Scooby. And we both were big old Scooby fans. And he's like, I want it to feel fun. I want it to feel, he's like, I don't like, he straight up was like, I don't want it to feel like Mysteries Inc. I want it to feel whimsical and old and fun. He's like, I want to, the art director is this guy named Eric Martin. And so Eric was like, he said to Eric, he's like, I want the paintings to feel like the old gouache paintings. You know, he's like, I really want that whimsical old feeling of the original, you know, Guess Who's or not. Is it? Oh my goodness. The original Scooby. Because, oh yeah. So Guess Who, we referenced Guess Who more than we did Mysteries Inc. You know, and so some people were really eagle-eyed about it, and they noticed that the model sheets for the gang, with the exception of Velma, were actually the Guess Who models for the main gang, and that is accurate. We did pull from the Guess Who gang's models originally. So, but yeah, it was a totally different style. It was a lot of fun. I feel like I didn't answer the question.
No, I think you did answer the question.
Okay.
Certainly, you know, I'd agree with you that it came across a lot more as kind of a callback for fans as opposed to trying to do something new.
Yeah.
That came across really well. So it's really interesting to kind of hear the initial thoughts behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just mostly us liking the original and really, you know, knowing that we wanted to bring we wanted to put the gang in the original old costumes. That also helped dictate keeping it older, or looking like the older one, because, you know, like those designs are not, you know, they're not dark design. I mean, they're monsters, but they're not dark, you know, so.
Yeah, that was such a special touch with the costumes. Obviously, as you mentioned, you were lead character designer for Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. Looking at your Instagram page, we saw that you designed Coco Diablo. What was your process when it came to designing Coco?
Oh, Coco was so when I got hired, they handed me the script, and then you know, I'm one of the South Park training things is that whenever script comes down, you read the script, because there's always like nuances in the script about what the writers would like to see. And, you know, in television, your job is to, even though this was a feature, you know, most of my training is television. In television, my job is to try to make all the cooks in the kitchen happy. So, and make myself happy at the same time. And so they really had this thing going on with Coco in the script, where they wanted her to feel like Edith Head, who is this old costume designer from the 50s and 60s, who Edna Mode from The Incredibles is based off of. So they really wanted it to have an Edith Head, Edna Mode feel. But I was very hesitant about making that happen, because I didn't like the idea of rehashing something that had already been done. And so there were a few rules that we had to have with Coco, which was she had to have glasses. She was supposed to kind of feel like a cooler, more fashionable version of Velma in a way. So that like it was almost like a yin and yang kind of situation with Velma. And so you could kind of see why she'd be attracted to Coco, because it's like these little things were happening. We wanted to keep her with bangs, and we wanted to keep her with a turtleneck, so that even if you didn't blatantly see the similarities to Velma, like, you know, they were subtle, you know. And so But like I said, I didn't want to go the whole Edna route. And so I tried a few different takes. Like I gave them like 5 options. Some of them where I tried to make, I had a pass where Coco had a haircut more like mine. And she was very 80s inspired, where it was, she looked like this musician named Susie Sue from a band called Susie and the Banshees. She kind of had a cowl neck dress going on with some big 80s glasses. And, you know, there was another version where I did give them the Edna mode version, but we put her in a 60s Jetson style mod dress to try and make it different. There was, you know, but finally Coco's design was the one where I was trying to make her look like an old Bond villainess. So like somebody you'd see James Bond go up against in the 60s. And so that was, you know, why she had gloves on, you know, because she's like, got to keep the fingerprints off of things, you know, like little story things like that, where it was like, that was how she wound up with gloves. And then Audie was like, oh, let's put her with the measuring tape, you know, the seamstress measuring tape, so that, you know, you get right away that she's a, you know, that she's a seamstress and a villain at the same time. So, but it was fun to do like a couple days worth of biz dev on what I thought Coco should be like. And then one of the other things, I don't know if Audie brought it up at all, was at the time originally in the script, her name was Bex Barker, and we found out we couldn't use the name. And so I went into the meeting when I was, you know, the version of Coco that we see, like I drew her Latina at that point. And I was just like, I was thinking, what if she's not white? You know, there's a lot of white people right now. Maybe we should try to make her not white. And the design worked. And at that time we needed to change the name anyway. So Esteban used to be named Cleo. So Bex and Cleo went out the door, and then Coco and Esteban showed up. So, but yeah, so that was kind of what we did.
In order to create the full understanding of Coco at the time of coming up with her design, were you aware that Marina Valesco was the cast of her?
There was no voice at the time. So and Myrna, like we got really lucky getting Myrna. Like she was perfect, you know, like, and I weirdly have had a couple little interactions with her on Instagram. It's been kind of fun, you know, like she said she loved the design of Coco, and so I was like, that's as flattering as it can get, you know, like when the person who brings your character to life is just like, I love her. Like,
yeah, that is incredible. And I definitely get that kind of, because I was a bit like, I was surprised when I first saw the movie that Coco wasn't more like Edna, because it almost seemed like the obvious way to go. And so I was like, oh gosh, so we're having a, you know, this designer, but they're also such a unique character in and of themselves. So I was very, very pleased with Coco. Like, definitely, I think one of the standout characters, which is very impressive considering, you know, prior to, you know, everything that's been going on, Scooby's been consistently at 2 direct-to-video movies every year. And so for Coco to come along in that sea of quite a lot of movies as such a standout is absolutely incredible. But another incredible thing that you also did on the movie is giving us the different iterations of Mystery Inc. as villains. So, you know, we had Daphne as the Space Kook, we had Fred as the Black Knight Ghost. So in terms of your work on that, did you get any input into which character dressed as what villain, or was it kind of pre-established beforehand?
it was pre-established in the script. I didn't have any say, but I sure had a heck of a lot of fun doing them. So
Yeah.
if I could have made Velma and Captain Cutler's suit bigger so that she was swimming in it more, that would have been like super fun, but she had to be able to be animated. So because, you know, when you look at Captain Cutler and you look at Velma, it's kind of like, you know, but yeah, I unfortunately had no say.
No, I mean, I know that a lot of the process was undecided until, the last minute. There were several concepts floating around, and when we did speak to Audie, he mentioned that Daphne was originally going to be Charlie the robot and not the space kook. Did you ever get to draw Daphne as Charlie, or was it just
No, I
once everything was
did.
locked in, you designed all that?
I wish I would have gotten a chance to do, Daphne as Charlie. It would have been fun to figure out how to get her hair involved. That was, because that's her one defining feature, so it would have been fun to figure out how to do that. Yeah. When I did do when I did Daphne as the space kook, though, that was one thing that I made sure that we got in there was the hair, because it was just like the skull floating in the hair shape was just kind of too silly and too fun to resist. So, but Charlie would have been a lot of fun.
It would have been fun. It would have been fun just to kind of see Daphne walking as Charlie the robot as well, because obviously it's kind of like, would the suit have been metallic, so it was physically walking like a robot as Charlie did, and it would have just been really fun to see. And obviously there's kind of things you could have been done with that as well, like, she wouldn't have been able to keep up with everybody else, and there could have been jokes to that end as well. So ultimately I 100% agree with the decision to use the space kick, but I also think it would have been really fun to see both. And again, it's just all of that kind of how it ties in with the original series and all the kind of almost fanfare that it does, that people who watched that growing up can sit back when their children are watching it and just sit back themselves and think, oh wow, that's that, and relate to it on a level that you can't with the rest of the Scooby movies. And would have loved to have seen, the same people work on another one, and hope to in the future. And I guess to that end, you did mention on your Instagram that initially you'd been hired to do 2 Scooby Doo Halloween specials, with one of them being cancelled due to the Warner Brothers merger, and obviously there's been other kind of projects as well. We understand that Warner Brothers have asked that you honour the NDA surrounding this, but in your opinion, do you think the fact they want an NDA in place means that there's the possibility they want to continue with this concept in the future, that it's something could be called back to?
I won't lie, like it was the exact same crew that did Trick or Treat. We did 2 movies back to back. And there was the second one was initially slated for this year to come out at the same time as Trick or Treat, but the sadly canceled Scoob movie pushed it to a later release date. But we're all keeping our fingers crossed, hoping that maybe they'll unearth it for a later date, because as great as Trick or Treat was, we really loved the second one. Our hearts were 100% in the second. Like, not that they weren't in Trick or Treat, but you know what I mean? Like we all had such a good time with the second one that it was like we couldn't wait to see it, and then to hear it got canceled. We actually had a lunch and drinks because we were just like, no, like, we were bummed out. So.
Well, it's something that we really do hope to see, and I think ultimately the support that Trick or Treat has kind of got would hopefully support them to think, do you know what, if everybody's enjoyed the work that these people have done so much, they're going to enjoy that equally again if they were to work on another project. And who knows, hopefully a third and a fourth, because for me this has been a standout Scooby movie of the last decade at least. Like, I have enjoyed this one so much. And as we said, you revealed the existence of the project along with its cancellation on Instagram, along with answering a fan question about its possible connection to Trick or Treat. So to that end, is that the kind of information that was kind of covered by the NDA and everything?
Yeah, the NDA kind of covers me from saying anything. I can't even put the work in my portfolio without like super hardcore privacy stuff. Like, they won't let me post anything without permission, and even then it's password protected. So, but that's typical for the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, we signed so many NDAs. What I can say about it, what I don't think will get anything in trouble, is that it did have a really fun Stephen King vibe to it. And it wasn't a sequel to Trick or Treat, and Coco was not in it. as much as I love Coco, she was not in it. So that I can say all of that without getting in trouble.
Oh, see, that kind of hit me there, because literally underneath this Scooby shelf, it's all Stephen King books.
Yeah,
so
he has 3 bookcases under the Scooby ones full of like first edition Stephen Kings. Like he adores them.
Audie and I are Stephen King dorks too. It was a nice pairing. I mean,
Yeah.
Audie and I were in school together too, but I mean, we weren't friends when we were in school. But we were at Cal Arts at the same time. And so it was just kind of like, it's kind of like cool to be reunited and then find out we had all these like things we enjoyed together. And so like when I'd bring stuff to the meetings, he'd be like, oh yeah, like that, but like do it more like this, so it'd be really fun.
And it's such a shame to hear that Coco Diablo wasn't going to be there, but I hope we see them again, because ultimately I think from all the things you've said, how, growing up, it was the artists that did the villains that you resonated with you the most, to then hear the villain inspiration behind Coco Diablo. It all fits perfectly as to why, she was such a standout character. So honestly, it's been amazing to hear, and we do hope to see a lot more of her.
Oh, I hope she comes back too. I hope I get to be involved with it. I hope if she comes back, I can come play with her some more. Like, that'd be great. But yeah, no, I'm glad everybody likes her so much.
Of course, Scooby, the franchise that's been going on for over 50 years, and no doubt another 50. But if you got the opportunity to work on a Scooby project, would you be interested? I mean, I think you stated that, but
yeah. Oh no, I would come run into a Scooby project so fast. Like just I didn't realize I'd have so much fun on it, but it was like one of those moments where you feel like your entire career has culminated to this one moment, of like awesomeness. And other people might be like, it's just a job, but I'm just like, this is the best job ever. Like, so good. Like, like keeping my mouth shut was really hard.
No, I couldn't imagine even, me in that situation, how difficult that must be. And again, in terms of, I guess, the takeaway from everything is that I don't know. I think when all the stuff happened with Scoob Holiday Haunt being cancelled, it was such a weird time, because we interviewed the co-director of that movie and not 3 days before the cancellation news, but it almost seemed that got so much hype because we had the title and stuff. And it's like, because this movie, the other movie that was shelved, cancelled, it didn't have a public title. It didn't, no one knows about the direct-to-video movies until we get the trailer. And so it's just kind of, my heart does go out for everyone that was involved in the movie, because obviously Holiday Haunt, that cancellation was really sad. But again, it's equally sad just thinking about the other things that maybe flew under the radar because they were less public. So definitely hoping that can be saved and resurrected at some point. It would be good. It'd be good.
Yeah, it would be really, I mean, without breaking the NDA, it would have been something that had a lot of people really excited. Like it did bring back some older characters that were fan favorites, and the crew just had a really great time boarding. Like, to see the storyboard artists so excited, like it was like all of us were just crushed. But like you said, with the direct to videos, you don't find out when it's coming out. Like, we don't even know when it's coming out. It's like until they drop something on YouTube and you're like, oh, hey, it's gonna come out, this is great. Like we didn't even know if Trick or Treat was canceled or not, like, because all the cancellations were happening. And then it was like after they announced Scoob and unfortunately Batgirl getting canceled, it was like later that week they're just like, here's a trailer for Trick or Treat, and we're like, yes, it didn't get shelved, so
I mean, it was a huge relief. And
yeah, it was huge.
Like, because we heard about Trick or Treat Scooby Doo through something. There was like a visual released about 8-9 months ago that people were thinking maybe it was a TV series. Like, nobody really knew what it was except for that Guess Who art style and the title. But even then, I think something like Holiday Haunt has such an advantage in that it's hashtagable, like hashtag save this. Whereas if you were to say hashtag save unnamed shelf Scooby Doo movie, it doesn't really have that ring to it. So
yeah, it kind of makes it difficult because there was like a petition and everything for Scoob Holiday Haunt because you know the name of it, you know what you're kind of convincing people to save, whereas saying to somebody sign this for a direct to DVD Scooby Doo, it kind of doesn't have the same ring to it. People don't exactly know what it is, and it's such a shame because
especially for one that was not slated to come out until next Halloween. We knew that it was going to be pushed to Halloween Scooptober 2023 if it was to come out, or when it was supposed to come out. But it's like there's not even a name floating through for people to be like, save it. Like I know what the working title was, but I can't say it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously stuff, in that department is uncertain, it's rocky, so who knows what will change. But I guess going on to the future, I'm not sure if you were able to discuss this yet, but you did mention that you've got your dream job, you're, kind of working on some exciting new projects at the moment. So, what's kind of on the horizons for you going forward?
Well, I just got done last week working on the new season of Futurama. So Futurama got greenlit for 2 new seasons. I was only on one of them. That would be season 8. I'm not sure when it's going to start streaming. Over here in the States, it'll be on Hulu. But got to have a lot of fun with that. Like, not every day you get to draw aliens. It's kind of fun, like I got to draw a bunch of aliens, and so I'm looking forward to that coming out, just because I keep winding up on these shows with established fan bases, and I just hope that I make the fans proud, or happy, not proud, but happy that, that the fans sit there, like I've got this little shelf, not in here, in the other room, of my career, my resume in Funko Pop form, and so it's kind of fun to add to the shelf, so I put Nibbler up there now because so Nibbler's up there with the space kook, and
we'd love to see a Coco Diablo on. That would be
I know,
incredible.
right? I would die. I would seriously die. There'd be an obituary saying Mary J. Hoffman died of excitement from a Funko Pop of her design. I mean, I've had, when I was on South Park, I did the Corral of the Coon. And so I've got the coon up there, Cartman is the coon. And so it's crazy to see your designs, especially when you make a mistake and they sculpted your mistake. That's the best and the worst, because you're no, now it's forever. You can't fix it now, but it would be great to see Coco as a toy. I would love it.
Yeah, that is crazy. I just couldn't imagine, because there's been so many situations like that. I'm sure I think we got to see the reaction to the Hex Girls creators, their reaction to the Hex Girls Funko Pop. So it would just be great to have that reveal. We need more Scooby Funko Pops.
We do.
100%.
I mean, I'm on a mission to get most of them, at least the villains. I've got too many Funko Pops. Those people take all my money. So I have, as you can tell, I've got nothing but books and toys in this room, and this is my office. Now as for the other project that I alluded to, it is back at WB. It is a direct response to Coco. They liked Coco enough that they are letting me do some visual development. Can't say on what, but it is really exciting to know that Coco was so well received that that they're letting me play. I mean, they're letting me come out and play. How cool is that? Not, like I said, not every character designer is as excited about stuff as I am. But man, like I still get excited. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years and I still get excited.
I think it just
So-
leads to a good end product, because the way that you're saying you get to go and play, and I remember speaking to Audie and it was just like having a Scooby Doo toy box, and it was like, what did I want to play with? What did I want to bring into the story? And I think all of that kind of just that emotion and that fun is what made it so successful.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I was sorry to go off on a tangent, but when I was character design lead the first time over on Bless the Hearts, I figured, I know me, and I know that if I'm working on something that I hate, like it's gonna show in the drawing, like whether I intend to or not. Like, if I'm being a professional, like I'm being as professional as I can, but the difference between what you get when you love something and when you don't like something is just huge. And so I would try to assign my designers stuff that I knew that they'd appreciate, or that they would enjoy doing, to kind of counterbalance the work that they didn't like. Like nobody really loves doing a turnaround unless they're insane. I'm insane. I kind of like them. But, it's kind of like not a reward system, because that makes it sound like, like you're doing dishes, but still it's like, is if you got something to look forward to that you can put your heart into and you're going to enjoy, like it shows in the work, and then the fans see it, and then they kind of enjoy it more because they can tell that whoever brought it to life was having a good time, and then it just becomes special.
I mean, it really has resonated with people. Like I don't think I've ever seen, especially with Scooby. Like we had the movie first come out, I think the something 10th of October, but without fail, within a few days, you had people dressing up as Coco Diablo for Halloween, and that was like,
I haven't seen anybody doing that yet. Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a few TikToks,
Oh,
a few, I will send
you
them.
the
Oh my gosh, yeah, please. Like, oh my God, I might cry.
Oh, it is incredible. And
I mean, I feel like we've not seen the end of Coco Diablo. Like, they are just so loved. We've never had a character be this loved and nothing come of it. Like, I feel like they must be there.
eventually,
Yeah.
hopefully. And I guess in terms of, people watching this, is there like an ideal place where they can keep up with your work and keep up with kind of the updates on what's going on?
I post the most to Instagram. Unfortunately, those lovely NDAs prevent me from posting anything. And as I get older, yeah, that age stuff sucks. So as I get older, I don't have time to do as much personal stuff. So like you guys saw, like my paintings and stuff, I miss painting, but I work, I eat, I sleep. And when something comes out, I just bombard everyone with all the designs I can finally legally show people. So so when Futurama comes out, be prepared to get bombarded with a bunch of aliens, so, aliens and aliens, because I can't talk about it. So do you know how hard it is being a chatty person and not being allowed to talk about stuff? It's like, oh.
Until these we didn't, but we're getting there.
Yeah,
we're getting there. We're getting there. So I guess that's kind of all the questions that we did have for you today. So thank you so much for joining. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm sure that everyone watching this will have just learned so much, and it's just amazing. And like you say, doing something with passion and stuff, it's just hearing about you talking about your work is just, it's been incredible. Like I know we've been on this call for a decent amount of time now, but it's actually flown by so quickly for me personally that I'm like, it's just so incredible.
Oh, well, good. Then hopefully people won't get bored when they watch me later. No, I'm kidding. Hopefully they enjoy it. Because I'm a hyper one. But thank you so much for having me, guys. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Coco and talk about my time on Scooby. It, as you can tell, I'm super passionate about it. I had a really great time, and I hope I get to do it again in the future. I really do. And I hope that, I thank you. Just thank you.
No, and just thank you so much for your time, because like I said, we have taken up quite a lot of it, but thank you so much for everyone for watching as well. We really do appreciate all the constant support and everything. Huge thank you to Sophie for joining. You can find her amazing, again, art Instagram account in the description down below. So I guess, Sophie, what is your Instagram at for the people watching?
Scooby Doo for life.
It's incredible. Please do go follow that. I'll leave that in the description down below. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.